Center, if you go to look at that.
That's looking down Demers now, towards the Sorley Bridge.
That, I believe, is the Golden, is that the Golden Square building there? We'll just give you a look here. Now we're back. Now this is the security building. That's where the fire started yesterday, late yesterday afternoon. That's what's left of it today. This is downtown Grand Forks today. Still smoldering. A beautiful building, too. One of the older buildings, I'm sure, in downtown Grand Forks. But that's where the fire started yesterday afternoon. That's what's left of it today. Basically one wall intact.
In some of that dramatic footage we saw last night, we saw one of the walls fall in. I'm not sure which building that was, but we saw the whole wall cave into the street with a big splash.
And that's the adjacent building. That used to be Griggs Landing, a blues bar in Grand Forks. That's what's left of that today. Above the Griggs Landing, I do believe there were some apartments above that area, so some people lost their homes. And as we had mentioned earlier, some people in the downtown area had to be evacuated, perhaps a false sense of security being higher up above the floodwaters, only for this to happen.
A lot of people have been out of town. I know I've talked to a few people, neighbors, who have been impacted in one way or another with this situation, who have relatives, friends, or business partners who are out of town. And of course, for them to call and say, and you certainly, you can't even come to compromise, comprehend a flood, but then when you add a fire to it, it doesn't make sense. There's Dr. Elliott's twice sold books. Saw the sign there.
We saw Handy Mail earlier. It just looks like a war zone in Grand Forks. You can't even tell really where you are anymore. You can't tell which building is which here. But at last count, 11 buildings damaged, I do believe, in this fire. We'll have to double check on that. But several buildings involved in downtown Grand Forks within a 4-block area, I do believe. And just smoldering rubble is left for many of them. That's the one wall that's basically left intact on the side facing the river. And the federal building way in the background, that wasn't damaged apparently by the fire. Now the fire skipped over across the street to 4th Street North. And this is video we just received not too long ago from WCCO in Minneapolis. Again, we're looking at, I believe, that building with the one sign there. That's Handy Mail there. Firefighters had a very difficult time trying to tackle this fire because of the flood. They were limited as far as getting their equipment there.
And had you heard now, Jane, as the Herald, were they all right, or?
That I'm not sure of yet. We're still trying to get some more information. Helicopters were called in to fight this fire. They had to use the floodwaters of the Red River to fight this fire. That's the Grand Forks Herald building, flooded and damaged by fire. And that appears to be just about all of the video. There's Central High School there, and that appears to be just fine after the fire. Some very devastating pictures to look at in the downtown Grand Forks area. As you said, a lot of business people who probably have...
Benjamin Netanyahu escapes indictment, but not suspicion. And a late break in the search for that missing A-10 warplane that vanished nearly 3 weeks ago.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Sunday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. We have a developing story tonight. There's been a break in the search for that missing Air Force pilot who vanished April 2nd when he flew out of formation. The fire, but they are still battling the water. Most of the city is now underwater and the Red River is still rising. We have two reporters in Grand Forks tonight, and we begin with Ron Claiborne.
The fires burned all night. Firefighters watching helplessly as flames consumed one building after another. This afternoon, it was over. The fires were finally out, only because there was nothing left to burn. In all, at least 11 buildings were destroyed.
It's almost like a war zone. It's unbelievable to see the magnitude of the damage done to the two cities, Grand Forks and East Grand Forks.
And still the Red River continues to rise. Today, the water supply was shut off. The city's water treatment plant is under several feet of water. With the floodwaters closing in on Grand Forks Main Hospital, the last of its patients, those most seriously ill, were evacuated. Late today, city officials ordered more residents to get out of their homes or face arrest. Jody Johnson, who had hoped to be able to ride out the flood, decided this morning to leave.
This morning we woke up, it was at the front steps and it was coming around the backyard, and we decided it was time to go.
Large sections of this city of 50,000 are now empty and underwater. The remnants of the dikes that had been built to protect them could still be seen, but just barely. By today, 75% of the population has fled, many to the homes of friends and relatives. But more than 3,000 have ended up at the nearby Grand Forks Air Force Base, living on cots in an old airplane hangar.
What could you take with you? What did you have time to bring with you?
A suitcase and some blankets and what we're wearing.
I really don't know what I'm going to do. Probably move.
Officials say it could be a week before the Red River begins to recede. It will be another week or more before the people who used to live here can finally go home. Until then, as one resident said, we're just trying to hold each other up. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, Grand Forks, North Dakota.
The pictures of last night's fire were so amazing, we wondered how it was possible to fight a huge blaze in the middle of a huge flood. ABC's Erin Hayes spent the day trying to find out.
It is a helpless feeling to watch your city begin to burn and not know quite how to stop it. The floodwaters are like a moat around these buildings, treacherous, icy, full of debris. The National Guard has been trying to haul fire trucks in. There is no safe way to drive a fire truck here.
Last night we ran over a dumpster. They're like floating icebergs out there. It's pretty dangerous.
There is no training for a fire like this. How to hook up a fire hydrant submerged under 3 feet of filthy floodwater. How best to save a building when you can't get within 3 blocks of it. How to fight a raging fire in the middle of a rising river.
The current's real strong.
And this is a river mixed with melted snow. The water is so cold, it is life-threatening.
With the cold, you can't stay in the water, and hypothermia, it pulls up the body temperature out pretty fast.
And it is slick river mud beneath their feet, or worse, the water is so murky they can't see just what it is they're walking on. They turn to aerial assault with flame retardants, but each pass means firefighters on the ground must move back, wait for the chemicals to settle, then go back in very carefully. They are working as hard as they can, harder perhaps than is truly safe. For now, most of the fire has been beaten back, but the danger remains, and there is no water in the fire hydrants anymore, just water all around them. Erin Hayes, ABC News, Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Still ahead on World News.
Grand Forks, and in the heart of the city, fire. Fire that began with an electric spark and natural gas and is now adding to the destruction that was started by the river out of control. Downtown Grand Forks, emptied by a 5-foot wall of water, has now been aflame for 24 hours. A destructive combination that has left North Dakota's 3rd largest city a steaming shell on America's northern frontier.
Walk away from those homes, walk away from those buildings. We will rebuild, and we will be stronger, and we will be in it together.
The mayor, who lost her own home to floodwaters today, is pleading with determined residents to give up and comply with evacuation orders that now include 3/4 of Grand Forks, 30,000 people. Hundreds are still being rescued by the National Guard.
We lived here 50 years and we've never had a drop of water except rain.
You got to be out of here in about 20 minutes.
Before the fire department could fight the downtown flames, it had to find submerged hydrants and move sightseers from rooftops and adjacent buildings. Dropping chemicals could have injured those still downtown against orders.
We were on the roof, we were watching people that were trying to get out. We watched the National Guard pull out once they gave up on the dikes.
By late this afternoon, a total of 11 buildings had been destroyed, 4 city blocks. Huge helicopters borrowed from the Forestry Service dumped 3,000 pounds of water as scoop onto storefront businesses and apartments.
The spectators really hampered our firefighting efforts.
Across town, Grand Forks' largest hospital was evacuated today. 190 patients airlifted to higher ground. New dikes will likely save the structure, but with no water, electricity, or staff, nurses and paramedics carefully loaded even the seriously ill for flights away from the floods.
A number of us have already lost our own homes and stuff, and have sent our families out of town, so it's real tough to see the hospital go too.
In Fargo, prayers today for both cities. Here in North Dakota's largest city, the water has begun to go down. New dikes still protect against overland flooding, but now there is new hope.
We've never seen it this bad, and hopefully, and we pray that this will not happen again.
But here in Grand Forks, the Red River continues to rise, and no one knows exactly how fast. It seems the flood gauge itself is now underwater, a final insult in North Dakota's season of plagues. Ann?
Jim Avalon, Grand Forks, North Dakota, thank you. From the snow-covered Colorado mountains tonight, there is word that Air Force searchers have spotted what may be the wreckage of that A-10 fighter jet.
Moved above the flood-ravaged streets to 4th Street. Slowly, almost methodically, the flames worked their way through many of the buildings that once gave this area its character.
It's been very difficult, really frustrating, because as a firefighter, you know, you want to get in there and fight the fire, and then you have to sit back and take a look at the situation. And we're just not using water at this level. I mean, we draft water and we put it in the water, but we couldn't get the trucks down there to effectively get water on the fire.
And finally, at one point, the firefighters' battle had waged on so long, their trucks grew silent when they ran out of fuel. Then the only sound that could be heard was the crackle of the flame.
Water hampered at the time. They were down looking for hydrants, and fire hydrants were underwater. They were looking to get hooked up to them, and then after they did get hooked up, they found out the city water pressure. We didn't have water pressure. So we had to kind of stand back and just kind of take a look at the fire. Report, Crash Rescue brought a truck in. The air base out here brought in some floating pumpers that we were able to put in the street and use some of the water in the street to put on the fire.
But as the night turned into morning, the flames continued to light up the sky, and the battle just to contain waged on. With photographer Chris Regenball, Rob Vogel, News Center 8.
Well, Sealant and particle board is the last line of defense to water that continues to spread through more residential areas.
Hopefully it's enough to keep it out of the basement. I figure a little bit of effort, maybe it'll save us a lot in the long run. If not, we tried.
Some roads are nearly impossible to travel. Some decided not to risk it, turning away and heading back to higher ground. Jim Beal and his family slept at the Grand Forks Air Force Base the past 2 nights. They say that's enough. Today, them and their tightly packed car are leaving.
We have a camera for posterity's sake, and cooler for food, just some vital things, but, you know, and bags of clothes, but we only took 2 days. I mean, you know, that was Thursday, and we were one of, I guess I'd say, one of the first or second area to evacuate, so, you know, we just grabbed probably 2 days worth what we could, and, you know, got all our stuff on the second floor, and so now we're like running out of clothes, so that's another reason to go to Fargo.
Most of the people in Grand Forks are doing the same. Barren streets blanket most of the town now, and all that remains are the bitter sights of a city brought to its knees by Mother Nature. Kurt Lenz, WDAZ, News Center 8.
And a lot of people, Jane, are in that mandatory area in Grand Forks. All of East Grand Forks has been told to leave the city, and I believe the last we heard from Mayor Stiles, I think we'll replay part of that interview, but he did believe that a lot of the residents have left. There's really, in that city especially, not too many places where there isn't water. It covers most of that city of 8,600 people. One of the points I was making as I was talking about our staff size being reduced is that we unfortunately will not be able to take as many of those phone calls trying to connect people. We just cannot handle them now. Well, a lot of our staff has had to go home, has had to evacuate themselves. We've sent some of our crews to a site outside of town so that we can bring you coverage tomorrow, because we are getting socked in here on South Washington and we will not be moving around too much tomorrow. So I would say a lot of our people have had to go. They've had to hook up with parents. We had a lot of several of our high school production crew who work our cameras just on a nightly basis, work 3 hours a night, weekly. Spent many hours here. I'm sure we violated some labor law somewhere by overtaxing our teen workers, but hopefully nobody will worry too much about that. But all those people have had to go home, so we're on we were skeleton before, and now it's even more bare bones. So please, we're asking that just emergency management officials that might have important announcements about citywide type issues. We'd especially like to hear from any of our neighbors to the north who are preparing, and anything they may have to say to their residents about their efforts, any assurances they may be able to offer. I'm sure they are all frantic after seeing what has happened here in Grand Forks. So
these vehicles throughout Grand Forks. This is on North Washington Street and Gateway Drive in Grand Forks. As you can see, the water has gotten quite deep in many areas throughout town. The storm sewers bubbling up there where the manhole covers were. I'm amazed that it still has that much pressure to bubble up like that. You'd think it would just seep up, but obviously a testament to how high the river level is. It's pushing it up all over town. Yeah. Now you're heading south here. This is the view going south from North Washington Street. One of the utility vehicles ahead here. See how slowly they're moving through town. Many vehicles having a hard time getting through. You can't even tell where the streets end and the curbs begin and the sidewalks begin. Unbelievable amount of water over the most of the north end of town here in Grand Forks. There's a look at Darcy's Cafe there on Washington Street. Maybe a boat ramp might be in order there if you wanted to go eat there today. There's a median. You can actually see a median for a change. Some snow piles out there too. Again, going down North Washington. Is that it's April, what is it, the 20th or 20th? Yeah, the 20th. We're losing track of days here. Yeah, I think it's still the 20th. 20th. It's the 20th today. And look, I mean, there are huge piles of snow. In fact, in our back, that we're using one of our piles of snow as part of our dike system to keep the water back. I can't believe we still have snow laying around, and given the fact that our waters are this high, it's kind of disheartening to see that as well. Backyards flooded. Somebody tried to put a piece of plywood in front of their window to keep the water out. I don't think it worked probably that time. And still a look toward the center of town. This is on North Washington Street still. For people who don't know, this isn't incredibly, well, I guess it is fairly close to the river, but I doubt they've probably seen anything like this. But this is all on Washington Street. Aaron got a pretty good tour of the flooded streets of Grand Forks. He went all around town today on Gateway Drive and on University Avenue in Grand Forks, also on Demers Avenue. And today I dropped my car off at a much safer location so it wouldn't get flooded and I wouldn't be stranded here at WDAZ. And on Interstate 29, you can't really tell how severe the flooding is. I mean, this is the heart of it right here. And I know we want to show as much of this as we can because we know that there are people in the shelter who, especially in the Air Force Base and some of the other shelters, they have a lot of TVs set up and people just want to know what's going on in their neighborhood. And hopefully, a lot of them pointing out their own homes. Yeah, maybe they'll be able to recognize at least their neighborhood. I don't know that there's any comfort in that, but maybe sometimes it's best just to know rather than to wonder how much water might be laying in your neighborhood. And there's some grass still showing in some of these neighborhoods, but I can't imagine that most of those homes' basements are not full. Now we're heading, this is heading toward the university off of Washington Street. Water lapping up against vehicles. There's a rare sight, grass. You don't see that very often here in this part of town. North 15th Street and 7th Avenue North. That's the location this video has been taken. This video is taken.
I would say that's not, not too far from where some friends of ours live, and I know that they did not. I mean, I can imagine that some of these people took many precautions at all. There was really
you feel
no
like you'd be
need to.
far enough away from the river to not worry.
And even the coulee is quite a ways from this area.
Yes. And we do have a couple of WDAZ employees who live around this area. As we mentioned a little bit earlier when we showed you this video earlier this afternoon, I believe 2 employees of WDAZ may be watching this right now and wondering how their home is. This might give you an idea of the situation in your neighborhood. And again, we're heading toward the University of North Dakota on a side street from Washington Street, North Washington Street.
I think you were out on the set when you watched this the first time today. This is the first time that I've seen this. I was out running around about the time that you were showing this, and it's very disheartening to see. And this is really, unfortunately, if you can, for areas that are underwater, this is fairly typical, and there are some areas that are a lot worse than this. So.
And there's, in some areas, there's quite a bit of debris floating through the water as well. This is pretty clear for the most part. Some snow piles you can still see. There's some debris there, it looks like. And a swimming pool in the backyard. All the water on the outside of the pool this time, though. I mean, you really don't have to explain much with this video, except just for location. I mean, the pictures say it all. Another National Guard vehicle there.
Pretty much the only way to go around. You shouldn't be getting around in these. Hopefully there's nobody left in these neighborhoods. This would have been in the mandatory evacuation zone probably for quite some time. So hopefully there weren't too many people who felt they could wait it out, because you would be some of those places very close to coming up on the first floor. A lot of these homes are the 1-story above ground and basement, so they didn't have a second story to go to. Not that you should have anyway, but we hope there were not too many people left in this neighborhood.
You're going down 20th Street here. This is 20th Street North in Grand Forks and 5th Avenue North. And the Department of Transportation vehicles going through the area. We did see them in the beginning shot of our news tonight. They've been used to build up dikes around United Hospital today. Amazingly, some houses still have a yard. Water is still a little bit further away. All the protection they can.
I'm sure in these neighborhoods you wouldn't notice an elevation difference from yours to your neighbors, but it's easy to tell when there's that much water there just how even 6 inches could make a difference and keep your at least your yard. Whether the seepage would get into your basement is probably another story. Most likely that would happen, but at least it's not right up against the window sills and flowing in that way.
Again, another view driving down 20th Street near the University of North Dakota.
Somebody put in an effort to sandbag. At this point, it didn't look like they may have needed it, but I'm sure by now, given the water's rise, slow rise throughout the day, they probably came in useful. A lot of people even still out sandbagging, especially in some dry areas to the southwest of the city, knowing the water was coming out today, trying to sandbag, and neighbors pulling together. I can only wish them luck and that they may have succeeded in keeping their homes relatively dry.
You just saw the Engelstedt Arena, and this is the Human Nutrition Research Center.
I know that. I talked to one gentleman out today who said he had spent time, I guess a lot of people were at the library on the campus today, trying to save records and books that may have been in lower levels. Obviously the volume of stuff in the basement of the library. Jane, you went to school at UND, so you would know whether, I assume that they had, the basement level was full of research materials, and so I don't know how much they were able to save, but that was just one of the many efforts going on in town to try and salvage whatever could be salvaged.
And here are some people being evacuated from their home. We saw this earlier. This is on the corner of University Avenue. It's a home right beside the Nutrition Research Lab, right along University Avenue, right by the University Park. Some people being evacuated from their homes here by the National Guard. And it looks like a boat on top of that National Guard truck there. And apparently they were using that to bring the media around to take pictures. They had members of the media in that truck to get pictures of the flood, to give you a better idea of what's happening here in Grand Forks.
You know, I noticed the thing about those boats too is they're not the flat-bottom boat you would think you would need in a shallow water pool. So there are obviously some areas of the city that are deep enough for that deep-hold boat to operate in. That's pretty scary.
But it's got to be hard to fight and fight and fight to save your home. It's got to be a really tough decision to leave your home. I mean, it's not a decision at this point in some areas. You are forced to leave your home for your own safety. But leaving your home behind, yeah.
Another example of what the Guard people have been doing in this community to save people, and I can't imagine how many hours each one of those has put in. I hope they get rest every once in a while. I'm sure it's very little rest for those people.
And if you can hear the dog barking, there's a dog barking in the background. Many people had to leave or tried to bring their pets along with them. And in this case, this family did have a pet you'll see coming up here shortly. Again, these are pictures taken this afternoon by reporter-photographer Aaron Quambeck on our News Center 8 staff, working hard today, riding with the National Guard. People bringing all the possessions they can carry with them in the canoes. And here on University Avenue, the water is knee-deep. I don't know how deep it would be by now, but the water keeps spreading throughout town.
The other danger we've heard many times, this water is barely above freezing, really. Danger from standing in it for too long.
And again, if you missed it earlier, we did bring you an updated river level in Greater Grand Forks. The current river level, as of 8:30, we believe, from the Emergency Management Office in Grand Forks, the latest river level, 53.8, and the crest still set at 54 feet. And this poor dog. And we are happy to say that this dog did make it home safely, or evacuate safely with his owners. And I do believe that we have somebody to talk to on the phone live tonight here on News Center 8. Joining us, Mike Brew, our news director here at News Center 8. Who do we have on the line tonight?
We have, well, excuse me. We have Keith Berger, the Grand Forks County Commissioner. Keith is in Larimore tonight. I believe he's staying in a motel in Larimore. Keith, can you hear us?
Yes, I sure can.
Fairly well out in the areas outside of the city in Grand Forks County?
Yes, I think it has. I think people are getting out, and the local communities have really gone overboard in trying to, help everybody. And the people out in Larimore and other communities have opened up their homes, and groups have got together to help. And so, I think it's really gone well. The only concern I have is that we might be looking at 2 to 4 weeks or longer at it, and that's going to be the real problem.
Were we talking about any communities, small towns, such as Manville or any other towns in this low-lying area's evacuation?
Well, there may be some problems there, and that's what hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of tomorrow, is start, identifying some other issues and concerns that we have to work on.
And again, that meeting is at 1 p.m.?
1 p.m., the Legion Club at Larimore.
Okay. Keith Berger, thank you for joining us. This is Keith Berger, Grand Forks County Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
You're looking at more live pictures, or not live pictures, but pictures taken this afternoon by reporter Aaron Quambeck. This is down University Avenue, and as you can see, the water quite deep throughout the northern end of town in the University area.
Saw Smith Hall where they had, I believe that was Smith.
Smith Hall, yes.
Where they sandbagged frantically for several days and thought they could save that building, but obviously the water had come on over that dike, that sandbag dike, as it did many in the community. Both communities, East Grand Forks, have a lot of problems also.
Now this is from the top of Columbia Road overpass. That was this afternoon. Look at the water, how far that goes. Well past, I believe, it looks like past 17th Avenue, but I'm not sure. It's uncertain where the water is at this point. It just keeps spreading. And more National Guard vehicles trying to get through, and there were some stalled vehicles, as you saw earlier, on Columbia Road. Mostly Department of Transportation and National Guard vehicles are about the only ones you'll see, except for a few stalled ones, like the one right there in the middle in Grand Forks.
You know, once you get past 13th Avenue, or excuse me, 17th Avenue South, you're no longer in the mandatory evacuation zone, but you can see the, or to the south and west of 17th Avenue, and as Columbia comes down, certainly it's dry that way in these pictures, but I don't think it was going to remain that way for long, and I believe, you know, maybe somebody has been out and about, could maybe give us a call and let us know what the situation is in some of these areas that we haven't been able to get to tonight, but I'd be curious just how far that's spread.
I know earlier today, like I said, I moved my car to a safer place, and I was on 32nd Avenue, and that was one of the early trouble spots here in town, and that was bone dry at about 6:30, but they had cut a little channel, a little drainage channel off of 32nd Avenue, and that drained some of that water away, and that alleviated that problem. And it was easier to get to the interstate, but I can't say for certain that that is still the same case now tonight. I wouldn't want to have anyone drive out there and find out there's a whole bunch of water and you end up getting stuck. So,
well, United Hospital completed its evacuation tonight at 7 o'clock. Well, actually at 8 o'clock when it closed down its emergency room. That was one reason why. All that water just kept moving west and south, and there's still a smaller and smaller portion of Grand Forks remains dry, and that's on the southwest side.
I should remind people that curfew is on in the mandatory evacuation zones. I'm not sure anybody could move in those areas anyway, except somebody with a military vehicle, so maybe that doesn't need to be said, but there is a curfew in place.
We're looking east on Demers.
these pictures were taken right around 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe 4, right around there. And back again on, this looks like University Avenue once again. This is all raw video shot earlier this afternoon. The news we're bringing you is a little rough around the edges today, but a lot of important stuff to tell you, and a lot of people want to see these pictures. They need to know the situation in their neighborhoods.
Not our usual way of doing things, but not the usual flood here either.
And that's one of the concerns, actually, as you saw there. Some of the wakes created by the larger vehicles. Earlier today we talked with Mayor Lynn Staus. He was talking about the effect the fast-moving water was starting to have on some of the structures and homes already in East Grand Forks, and certainly with some of the larger vehicles driving around, wakes can take a toll over the long run.
We asked for an update on Columbia Road and 32nd. Official somewhere in that area called and said that Columbia Road and at 32nd is dry, although the eastbound lane is starting to take on a little water. That being one of the only routes to the interstate left in case this final area gets evacuated. Well, it is under a mandatory evacuation in southwest Grand Forks, but 32nd will be a major route if that finally comes to fruition, because I think there are a lot of people who are still in that area.
Again, looking at some homes on University Avenue in Grand Forks. And the Department of Transportation vehicles again. And I know a lot of people from East Grand Forks are wondering what the situation is there today. And it has been virtually impossible for the news crews to get much further than Grand Forks today. We are making every effort to get all the latest pictures for you.
We did talk with Mayor Lynn Staus, and he mentioned that at this point, perhaps 5% of East Grand Forks residents actually remain in the city. 5% of about 8,500 people. Some of those people yet fighting the battle, trying to keep their homes dry.
And speaking of Lynn Staus, I believe we do have him on the telephone with us live.
Yes. Mayor, thank you for joining us again. As we've mentioned earlier, talked about before today, it's been difficult to tell viewers to some extent how things are going in that community, especially with transportation so curtailed. And your calls and those of other East Grand Forks officials and people have been very helpful. What are you passing on for us tonight?
Okay, we have moved out of the police station with our emergency office, our EOC office, and we are now moving out to the Comfort Inn. And the reason for moving out to the Comfort Inn is the sewer was backing up in the police station, and there was 3 feet of water, and it was leaking quite a bit. So we thought it best that the only way to get up to the police station was you had to go by either boat or a vehicle that was large enough to get you over 3 feet and sometimes 4 feet of water. So that's the reason for moving out to the Comfort Inn. Tomorrow we'll basically be setting up a city hall in one of the offices here, or we might take over the whole dining room and set up different offices in order to get the city operating again. And this will be the place that they can contact us for information. I believe I gave you 2 numbers. I don't have them with me. Do you have those numbers and you could put them up for the people again?
Lynn, we don't have those numbers, I don't believe, right available. Well, we're working on that. We'll try to do that in a moment.
Okay, that was emergency number that they could call for. Many people were evacuated to Crookston, and from there they were dispersed out in different areas. I know we have many people up in Bemidji, and the people have been very kind in helping out with putting these people up, getting them lodging and getting them clothing. Like I said earlier, that they went with basically the clothing on their back and very little, if nothing else. But it's been very devastating for the people, and we're going to do everything we can to get the answers out to these people, and also to get them the help that's needed in order to, when they come back, to get their homes established, and if it's businesses, to also get their businesses going again.
If we could please flash that number one more time. Lynn, we want to make sure this is the right number. Do you recall, is this 773-1691?
Yes, that was the emergency one for East Grand Forks. But did you have a number for Crookston?
Yes, the Crookston shelters.
The Crookston shelter, yes.
Yes, we do have those numbers that we could flash on the screen for people in a moment.
And that's, if they want to get a hold of somebody, those are the numbers that they should look for or give a call to, and they can find out where they're staying. If you have not registered at this place, please call there, and or I believe it was one of these 2 numbers that they should call to get registered so that we can find out where they're located. And we want to try to get a file made up on everybody in East Grand Forks so that if there are any calls that come in, we can let relatives know where you're at.
Lynn, we talked just a moment ago with Grand Forks County Commissioner Keith Berger. They're going to hold a special county commission meeting in Larimore tomorrow. What's the status? Are you going to have an emergency meeting here shortly?
Well, we've been having meetings all along during the day, and we will be having a press meeting tomorrow at the Comfort Inn at 11 o'clock. But 9 o'clock in the morning, we're meeting with many different agents in the county and state, and also with our own local people. So we will be meeting at 9 and then discussing many of the things that we have to set up.
There was a press conference this morning at the East Grand Forks Technical College. There were, do I believe, was Colin Peterson there?
Yes, Colin Peterson, Congressman Colin Peterson came, and the reason he came was because he wanted to give us reassurance that he would do everything he could to help the people. He's going to set up an office, he believes, in Crookston, because we're too wet around here that people will be able to contact him at that office as soon as he gets it set up. And there again, he will be out there to help and assist the people.
There's just such a mass of information, Mayor, to get out, and that was one of the purposes for the press conference today. Any other major developments from that news conference?
Well, our first thing is, we want to make sure that the evacuation, safety was the number one thing we talked about. And after we got done with the evacuation, then of course it starts talking about the things that we have to do to get online so that we can get the information out to the people. And one of the things too is to reassure these people that help is going to be there is the most important thing. And then I believe you have the FEMA number that you have flashed a number of times, I'm sure. But the FEMA number is one that they can contact and get the paperwork started. And this is one way they will get help and assistance. So people should write this number down and contact them for assistance.
Okay. Mayor, where are you spending the night?
I got a room at the Comfort Inn tonight. So we moved a number of people that were in the EOC, and we came out here to stay because everything seems to be operating. And if we do run into a problem, we're going to move a generator out here, and then also if we have problems with sewer backup, we're also going to try to bring in either trucks that we can help in hauling away the sewer problems and that take care of us and keep us operating.
One final question. How is the area of East Grand Forks east of Highway 220 north and north of U.S. Highway 2? Is that one of the last dry spots? A lot of people on the west side are wondering.
The only dry spot that we really have kind of is around the Civic Center. And then if you go west of that on the north end, there's a lot of water up in that area. And also, if you go to what we call the old Sherlock Park area, those homes are underwater probably 15, could be a second story or up to 15 feet or 12 feet, somewhere in there. So that area is real bad. And then, of course, as we go around the town, the Greggs area is real bad because it got very deep in there. If we go to the southeast part of the community, the water hasn't gotten to the first floor, but it has started to go into some of the basements. And as we go out to the south end of town, over the Murray Bridge, the water is probably up about 4 feet onto the houses to 5 feet and somewhere in that area. And as we go further out on the point to the southern part, where probably the houses are up to, it goes down a little bit, 3 feet, and then over the first floor is about, I think everybody is probably covered close to the first floor, and their basements, of course, are full.
So at least 3 feet deep in many parts of East Grand Forks, at least?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear you.
So at least about 3 feet deep in many parts of East Grand Forks?
In many parts of East Grand Forks, at least 3 feet deep.
And up to about 15 to 20 feet in some other areas.
In the real low-lying areas, more or less probably 12 to 15, something like that.
Is there going to be another search for any people going through? Is the National Guard, Coast Guard still doing that?
Security of the area is very important, and the National Guard, Coast Guard, and our policemen, and then we have the Sheriff's Office, Polk County, and the DNR. They're all helping to provide security for the area. We're keeping boaters all out. We will not allow any boating to happen. And also, we are not going to allow people back into the town And the reason for that is there's just nowhere to go and no reason to come back at this time. So people are going to be kept out of the town for at least a week, and it'll probably end up being longer.
The Minnesota Department of Transportation is advising no travel in East Grand Forks because of the severe flood. How is the road out to the Comfort Inn? Did you have trouble getting there?
You know, that's funny because you just start to head east, and it's like there isn't even a flood around. And it's just like another world, just within a couple blocks of where bad flooding is going on.
Well, Mayor, we appreciate you coming on again, and we'll certainly join you in coming days to update and help update the situation for yourself and residents of East Grand Forks. Thank you.
Well, I know our people want the coverage, and we appreciate the job you're doing, and thank you all for going on and helping the people out. It's a real service you're doing to us.
If you can find a way for us to maybe come over to the press conference tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow at 11.
We'll have to get that helicopter so you can get a ride.
Okay. We'll take you up on it.
I don't think the King Bridge will open by tomorrow.
No.
Thank you, Mayor.
No.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
East Grand Forks Mayor Lynn Staus.
Moved above the flood-ravaged streets to 4th Street. Slowly, almost methodically, the flames worked their way through many of the buildings that once gave this area character.
It's been very difficult, really frustrating, because as a firefighter, you know, you want to get in there and fight the fire, and then you have to sit back and take a look at the situation. And we're just not using water at this level. I mean, we draft water and we put it in the water, but we couldn't get the trucks down there to effectively get water on the fire.
And finally, at one point, the firefighters' battle had waged on so long, their trucks grew silent when they ran out of fuel. Then the only sound that could be heard was the crackle of the flame.
Water hampered at the time. They were down looking for hydrants, and fire hydrants were underwater. They were looking to get hooked up to them, and then after they did get hooked up, they found out the city water pressure. We didn't have water pressure. So we had to kind of stand back and just kind of take a look at the fire. Airport Crash Rescue brought a truck in. The air base out here brought in some floating pumpers that we were able to put in the street and use some of the water in the street to put on the fire.
But as the night turned into morning, the flames continued to light up the sky, and the battle just to contain waged on. With photographer Chris Regenball, Rob Vogel, News Center 8.
And there were also some pictures. Devastating scene coming up here. This is the flooded streets of Grand Forks, and soon you will see the further destruction from the fire. These were taken late this morning or early afternoon.
And people probably know this, but that fire started basically 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago.
And burned into this morning. They had the 9:30 press conference, an unbelievable press conference where they said it was a life or death situation. Anybody still left in that area would be evacuated by helicopter. I have no idea how many people ended up being taken out of that area, but the fire was still not under control at that time, and a lot of helicopter efforts to drop water brought it under control, and this is what you see after they pretty much brought it under control.
Now, you were at that news conference today, correct?
Yeah,
and you were on the scene this morning. I saw you on our roof this morning.
Yeah, watching those helicopters come in. They dropped 2,000 gallons of water at a time, and they were going frantically. I can't even estimate the time frame, but it was well over an hour, and probably much longer than that. This was just hard to imagine. It looks reminiscent of a World War II bombing run through the streets of London or something. Entire sections of the wall collapsed. Jane, you've seen this video before.
Yes,
so
I did.
Maybe you can narrate what we're seeing.
The pink building on the far left, that is the security building where the fire is believed to have started. And next door, some apartments and a former blues club. That's the old security building, they say. Again, just rubble left over. This is the front of the building, or what used to be the front of the building that you're looking at. This is, I believe it housed a checking office, like CheckRight or something like that. Yes, and that's hard to tell from here. Now that's very near the Grand Forks Herald. It's Handy Mail there. Again, on South 3rd Street in Grand Forks.
Entire roofs caved in on these buildings.
And also Dr. Elliott's Twice Told Tales bookstore in Grand Forks. The fire just skipped from building to building, and apparently 11, all told, 11 buildings involved
this
or
morning,
damaged?
that figure that I hadn't exactly, well, no, I've heard that, but I've heard others also. At that time, they just said, we're not talking buildings anymore, we're talking blocks. They were talking about a 4-square block. Obviously, there's a certain number of buildings that were total losses, others just sustained some fire damage, but I'm sure it was at least 11 with some pretty severe damage, and then others with damage here and there on those.
There were also apartments above the former Blues Club, and here's a look again at the security building. Just one wall, basically, standing.
One of our part-timer camera crew, a young gentleman, a senior in high school, his sister lived above one of the buildings, and we were looking at some of the tape shot the day before by Chris Regenball, some incredible pictures of right in the same area almost as the fire was raging, and he was pointing out where his sister's apartment had been.
And luckily she had evacuated, but she did have a pet that apparently did die in that fire.
Yeah, that was Paul Menke's sister. So a lot of tragic tales.
Again, many helicopters flying overhead looking at the scene. Helicopters, again, were used to pour floodwaters of all things on this fire to try to stop it.
Do we know if this was shot off a boat or off of a...
I don't know if it was National Guard or if it was like one of those large vehicles or if it was actually a boat. But still smoldering hours after the fire was put out. Telephone pole, it looks like, smoldering there.
It's unbelievable that...
Grand Forks Herald building there.
That, and I believe they published their edition today in St. Paul, is that? Or the St. Paul Pioneer Press?
Yeah, they had it printed in St. Paul, apparently.
Right,
so.
yeah.
And we're still trying to find out more on why the fire department was called to the scene of something. Our roof cam has been monitoring the situation. Helicopters flying overhead and an emergency vehicle called. We're trying to find out some more information on that for you. Maybe if we could go back to that roof shot. Could we go back to the roof shot? Okay, we'll be right back. We'll have more on that right after this break.
That's the annex of the Grand Forks Herald. It's shifted around. That's the Central High School, and you see City Hall on the right-hand side. Okay, that was the magic of television.
Yes.
Won the battle against the fire, but they are still battling the water. Most of the city is now underwater, and the Red River is still rising. We have 2 reporters in Grand Forks tonight, and we begin with Ron Claiborne.
The fires burned all night. Firefighters watching helplessly as flames consumed one building after another. This afternoon, it was over. The fires were finally out, only because there was nothing left to burn. In all, at least 11 buildings were destroyed.
It's almost like a war zone. It's unbelievable to see the magnitude of the damage done to the 2 cities, Grand Forks and East Grand Forks.
And still the Red River continues to rise. Today, the water supply was shut off. The city's water treatment plant is under several feet of water. With the floodwaters closing in on Grand Forks Main Hospital, the last of its patients, those most seriously ill, were evacuated. Late today, city officials ordered more residents to get out of their homes or face arrest. Jody Johnson, who had hoped to be able to ride out the flood, decided this morning to leave.
This morning we woke up, it was at the front steps and it was coming around the backyard, and we decided it was time to go.
Large sections of this city of 50,000 are now empty and underwater. The remnants of the dikes that had been built to protect could still be seen, but just barely. By today, 75% of the population has fled, many to the homes of friends and relatives. But more than 3,000 have ended up at the nearby Grand Forks Air Force Base. living on cots in an old airplane hangar.
What could you take with you? What did you have time to bring with you?
A suitcase and some blankets and what we're wearing.
I really don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably move.
Officials say it could be a week before the Red River begins to recede. It will be another week or more before the people who used to live here can finally go home. Until then, as one resident said, we're just trying to hold each other up. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, Grand Forks, North Dakota.
The pictures of last night's fire were so amazing, we wondered how it was possible to fight a huge blaze in the middle of a huge flood. ABC's Erin Hayes spent the day trying to find out.
It is a helpless feeling to watch your city begin to burn and not know quite how to stop it. The floodwaters are like a moat around these buildings, treacherous, icy, full of debris. The National Guard has been trying to haul fire trucks in. There is no safe way to drive a fire truck here.
Last night we ran over a dumpster. They're like floating icebergs out there. It's pretty dangerous.
There is no training for a fire like this. How to hook up a fire hydrant submerged under 3 feet of filthy floodwater. How best to save a building when you can't get within 3 blocks of it. How to fight a raging fire in the middle of a rising river.
The current's real strong.
And this is a river mixed with melted snow. The water is so cold, it is life-threatening.
With the cold, you can't stay in the water, and hypothermia, it pulls up the body temperature out pretty fast.
And it is slick river mud beneath their feet, or worse, the water is so murky they can't see just what it is they're walking on. They turn to aerial assault with flame retardants, but each pass means firefighters on the ground must move back, wait for the chemicals to settle, then go back in very carefully. They are working as hard as they can, harder perhaps than is truly safe. For now, most of the fire has been beaten back, but the danger remains, and there is no water in the fire hydrants anymore, just water all around them. Erin Hayes, ABC News, Grand Forks, North Dakota.
And we have several views of the fire, several different news agencies getting pictures of it. If we could show you some more aerial footage of the firefighting effort in Grand Forks. And take a look at that video in just a moment if we have that ready. Okay, here it comes from downtown Grand Forks. I believe these were taken this morning or late this or this afternoon. Taking a look at those in a moment. Here's what it looked like from the air from one of the choppers flying overhead. Again, just shells of buildings that you see here. This was recorded earlier today. Trying to figure out which buildings are which. It's really hard to tell here.
From the air, it's hard.
Yeah. I believe that is, that probably is, that is the security building there to your left and the adjacent apartments and a former blues club group, Griggs Landing. Just shells of buildings left there. And again, they said we're fighting a fire that's jumping block to block. They weren't counting buildings.
Pretty much words escape a person at this.
Just an empty shell, that's all it is. And these pictures are courtesy of KSTP in Minneapolis, our ABC affiliate in Minneapolis. And as you can see, the fire skipped across the street. That white building on the corner is called Heritage Corner, and that houses some offices there. And next door to that, I believe there was a bridal shop there. Formal Affair, I believe that place was. I'm not exactly certain. Yeah. Okay, Formal Affair.
Tuxedo shop. Yeah.
A tuxedo shop, and then Golden Square, I believe, next door to that. I'm not certain. On 4th Street, the fire jumped from 3rd to 4th Street. Again, some overhead shots taken today, the aftermath of the fire.
Now we're talking about this. Did we do our little update of what we thought we knew?
No, we didn't actually. Apparently, if there was a fire call in the area of 18th Avenue South, these are unconfirmed reports, however, Apparently the fire has been put out. No reports of injuries or loss of life. Apparently quickly extinguished, though, whatever it was apparently called out on 18th Avenue South in Grand Forks. That's all the commotion we saw from our roof camera a little bit earlier tonight. And the building there, charring the top floors, I'm not certain which building that is. I think that is the First National Financial Center in First National Bank in Grand Forks. Again, some dramatic pictures. The courthouse there, you can see right below the wing of the... Now this is the flooding that we saw earlier today. It's hard to tell if it's Grand Forks or East Grand Forks. Water inundating just about every street.
Can't pick out a landmark and all
No,
of that.
not at all. I'm not sure what this large collection of buildings is in the middle. Maybe as we move closer, we might get a better idea. People who live in the area might have a better idea. We're uncertain at this point which this is. A large collection of buildings, possibly school. Here's one of the choppers that was used to bring water to the scene of the fire.
I think this video runs a little bit longer. Wayne, if we can let it go a little bit more, okay. That the, which bridge is that right in the background
I
there?
believe that's the Sorley Bridge that
Yeah,
you
I
just
think
saw
so.
there. And of all things, using floodwaters to fight a fire. And you were watching this from the rooftop today, Milo, weren't you?
Yeah, they were amazingly fast. And at one point, maybe they were, but we never got quite figured out whether there were two or just the one because they were so fast. They would drop down below our sight line. We could not see all the way over there. They would drop below the trees, and then all of a sudden there would be another one there. I mean, you can see how fast they could fill. And, you know, you can also see as it flies over all the water behind it in all the areas, especially right in downtown area of East Grand Forks is under an unbelievable amount of water.
Yeah, we talked to Mayor Lynn Staus, if you missed it earlier this evening. We talked to him over the phone, and he was saying that there's anywhere from 3 feet of water up 3 feet deep at some people's houses from the outside to probably 12 to 15 feet at some people's homes. He was mentioning the Sherlock Park was one area particularly hard hit. Southeast corner, he said there's water in some basements in town. The south end of East Grand Forks, probably 4 to 5 feet of water in some areas in the southeast part of East Grand Forks. And East Grand Forks has moved its offices, its city offices, to the Comfort Inn, and I know that Grand Forks has moved its county offices in the meantime, temporary location in Larimore because of the flooding situation. We talked to Keith Berger, Grand Forks County Commissioner, a little bit earlier as well, and he was saying that they have quite a bit of water in the county office building. Did he mention it about 4 feet, right around there?
Yeah, 4 feet in the basement. We're going to trying to work out something with a Minneapolis TV station that had 7 reporters in our area today. That's more reporters than we have. We're just a small station, I guess, trying to do big things with this coverage, and
so
maybe
far,
we could. I'll pat everybody else on the back. If anything, I'm more of a liability with this sore throat and scratchy voice, but everybody else here has done unbelievable things. You can see what's going on behind the scenes. We have people. Where we usually have 6 people to do these things, we have 3, and people are running from one room to another, setting up our cameras, running back, starting tapes, starting audio, and you don't realize the effort that's going in to bring you what we're doing here tonight. I'll just say thanks to those people right now.
Again, Jim Johnson, who's behind our camera right now, probably, 40 hours you've been working today? Right around there?
He's too modest to say.
Yes, he's
for
not
sure.
going to say. He's been up for several hours, as are most of the people who have been working here today. Maybe we can pass along some announcements.
I don't know if we mentioned
Yes.
the no school in Pembina. Grades 7 through 12 are asked to report to school in Pembina, but school is called off indefinitely, obviously. Pembina, one of the last spots before the water heads over the border into Canada, and They have to be concerned, having seen what has happened all up and down the river. Obviously, when we saw what happened in Breckenridge a week ago or so, bad there, and Fargo had some bad situations of dike breaking. And nothing could have prepared us to see what has happened in Grand Forks. Unprecedented evacuations and water in the... I believe one official today says we are beyond even what would be considered the 500-year floodplain. As we said, we've broken our record for this century by 5 feet, and we're not even sure that the crest could go even higher, and this water is not going to drop anytime soon. The broad crest is what they're calling for. It's going to stay very close to 54 feet. There is what we have, our latest current level within the last hour or two since we've gone on the air. Again, very close to the projected crest. We just hope that it's not, doesn't go any higher than that.
I know, it kept on raising, and they kept on raising the crest projection, and I mean, this Red River, as we say, it's an unpredictable river. It's just too hard to control. Talking about some evacuees, Grand Forks Air Force Base, we talked to Kim White earlier today, and she called us from the Grand Forks Air Force Base, and she said there's an ocean of cots at the 3-bay hangar. It's a great big hangar. If you've ever been to Friends and Neighbors Day, as she was talking about, at the Grand Forks Air Force Base, you can imagine, if you've seen the Air Force planes, how large they are. And they have an ocean of cots at the 3-bay hangar. They have medical facilities there, and a lot of people just hanging on to loved ones. I mean, they probably got out on with the clothes on their back and with their families in tow. And they had, how many did they say? About 2,000 people at the Grand Forks Air Force Base. That was as of this afternoon. There probably may be more tonight. The reaction from the people there, most people are numb, traumatized because of this experience and not knowing what they're going to be coming home to, a lot of uncertainty. AT&T has set up a phone bank for people so they can call their friends and relatives who are looking for them. I know that we do have a phone number for the Grand Forks Air Force Base shelter. If we could take a look at that in a little bit, we can let people call that number and try to get in touch with some of the people that may be at the Grand Forks Air Force Base shelter. There it is on your screen, the number 747-3384, and that's for evacuees staying at the Grand Forks Air Force Base. There's also a number for a list of caretakers for pets, and that number, you probably won't see that one. 747-3000 is the number to call there. Caretakers, a list of caretakers.
Working 24 hours a day, losing homes, has been absolutely tremendous. As I talked to you this morning, my own home is going under. It may not be total, but now I am in the same bucket with the rest of you. I do not feel bad for one reason, because we will rebuild, and we do have faith, and I believe in our people, and I believe together we will all pull out of this, and our city will be stronger. One of the things I do want to do is, from my heart, thank all the area residents for the way.
On a staff, we're down to about 5 people, and that shot you see up there is stationary, unfortunately. We did the best we can. Last night we were able to have an operator up there, but because of some conditions that do not warrant it, we can't have an operator up there anymore. So that's a shot to the roof as it looks north. We were going to try and get a shot south. We had one request for a shot looking south down the other way, but the trees between WDAZ and the Border Patrol building, which is right next to us. By the way, I saw they did have a boat in the back, so I don't know if they don't mind. It's all covered up. But anyway, if that starts floating, we are in trouble, but it's not. But anyway, you can't get over the tree, so even if we could turn the camera south, you probably couldn't see anything. 24th, which is between right after the Border Patrol there, 24th going east and west and towards Columbia Road. That's where we were using most of the time in the last couple of days. We were able to get out that way, and in most cases go down to 20th Street and turn for quite a while, turn both left and right there, north or south. But it started coming over, and last night and early this morning, 24th, I'm not sure exactly how deep it is, but the few people that were out said that you probably couldn't travel on that anyway. And
Right.
32nd now, as I understand it, is probably the only one that is probably still accessible. Obviously, as you can see by the shot, it may not look to a certain extent that bad, because actually Washington Street is both lanes are open. Now, you go further down, as I understand, 13th, the water is across on 13th in Washington, possibly 17th. When those trucks go by, I see, as we look out our window, I can see some splashing. So water has crossed that in certain spots. We're just on a high spot here, so we're a little more fortunate. We've had some interesting calls as we look at that. Most people, especially the business community, is aware that Washington Street is going to undergo a 2-year major construction project that was supposed to start probably this month. Obviously, it's not going to level out those streets. There's quite an incline there to get on. It's tough in the winter. Well, I'm sitting here thinking now, if those were 2 or 3 feet lower, oops, you know, the folks wouldn't have WDAZ to be watching here this morning.
Right now on the east side of Washington, where we see all those houses, the water is come up quite a bit, and it is kind of lapping on South Washington, some of those areas. It's just a matter of maybe time, if the river goes higher, that would go on to Washington.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. When we had somebody actually up there manning the camera, and it was turned a little more to the east, and I didn't see, I saw one shot last night on the other side of the roof of GF Photo. All of a sudden, I didn't realize that was a residential, and you could see the water coming up behind GF Photo down in there. So the water over on that side, definitely the east side, is the deepest and the biggest problem. Of course, East Grand Forks, and we certainly don't want to leave those folks out, as we've mentioned many, many times, and they were just devastated. They really came first in East Grand Forks on whatever day it was, you know, I can't even remember anymore, and they had to go through some very serious evacuations. Mayor Staus did a great job in trying to keep things cool, but boy, when it goes, you know, when it starts, it starts, and
Really?
you just have to get out.
Not much time. You can just see that by how many cars are left in the street and that are flooded up to the windshield or higher.
I had a friend of mine that was that lives out on the point, and I called, and we have a couple. In fact, Ernie the Angler, you know, he lives out on the point, but Ernie wasn't. Ernie got out of Dodge. He's probably fishing somewhere over there at East Grand Forks. But called another friend over there that lives a few blocks from him, and he had already been isolated.
Trying to accomplish. One of the greatest things I think that we are doing right now is we have some people in here, and I know they were doing this yesterday too, that are rescuing the pets out of the homes, and that to me is a plus. I stood on the corner of 32nd Avenue in South Washington yesterday and watched people as their pets were coming in boats, and I believe we need to do that for the mental stability of the people, and that was a good human side that I saw that we really need to do. As the floodwaters recede, which we have not seen yet, I would like to think that we will start looking to the human side of things. I did get to visit one of the shelters out at the air base last night that housed St. Anne's and also some of our special needs people. And I walked out of there with a whole new meaning and a whole new feeling of why we are all doing this job and working around the clock to get things done, because those people, even though they're in close quarters, sleeping on cots, are just still in the highest spirits and are just so happy to know what's going on and knowing that they possibly will be able to go back. I had a hard time because one of the people in there was telling me she was really excited about going home and so forth, and her building is one of the buildings that burned downtown. I did not have the heart to tell her that her home is not there any longer. I guess now it's just to wait to see where we're at and keep hitting the challenges as they come up with our group of volunteers and our crews. And as things come up, we'll attack them, and as the waters start to recede, we will immediately jump into a recovery period. In fact, right now we will be jumping into a recovery period with FEMA and Job Service to help people understand where their next paycheck is going to come from, particularly when they have lost their jobs. So I think now it's a lot of questions and answers on how do we survive. We need to be available there with the various agencies to assist the people to get them through this. And again, I state this has been a long, long period for all of us, and we still have a long road to hoe, but at this point I think we're just taking it one day at a time. And I really don't have a lot to add today, except I hope the water crests. Thanks.
Mayor Pat Owens with her part.
Good morning. In regards to law enforcement and security issues that are going on right now in the city, as of this morning, I had a report of only 2 burglaries so far in the city of Grand Forks. One was an audio store. The other one was a local pawn shop. As far as forced evacuations, I have a report that we had 2 of those. One was a male subject who was blind, who refused to leave his home. Police did have to go in him and take him out physically. The water was coming in his front door at the time. The other forced evacuation, if you want to call it forced, was a 96-year-old lady who was heavily medicated. They had to take her out. The other thing I want to remind on there is we still under a 24-hour curfew in the city of Grand Forks in these evacuation areas that have the mandatory evacuation on them. In regards to water rescue, 8 people were taken out yesterday by a number of different water rescue teams. The Grand Forks Sheriff's Office has a water rescue team that's coordinating with the Coast Guard. We have another water rescue team up here from Winona, Minnesota that came up, and a couple of other peripheral ones that we know have arrived in the city. They are now all coordinating together on all these water rescues. They're continuing their patrols throughout the city. Should anybody still put out a flag or notice that they want to be picked up, we're still going through the streets with those boats. The Attorney General's office has contacted us. They are going to be coordinating additional law enforcement personnel to come into this city when we need to expand the security perimeter, and before the city ever is reopened for people to re-enter Grand Forks, we need additional law enforcement people to do that, and the Attorney General's office in Bismarck is assisting us in that. The other reminder I have for the Emergency Operations Center, please keep that to emergency calls only. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm pleased to report from the fire department this morning that the fires in the downtown area have been contained, and we have considered that they are out at this time. We plan on bringing in a couple cranes today, and we'll be knocking down some of the walls that are freestanding there. We need to do that for the safety of people in the area when we go back in there, and also we need to do that. Maybe we can determine a little bit of cause and origin of the fire, where it started, and also to clean up and do some mop-up of the fire situation and looking for extensions and hope and that they are all out. Over the evening, we did have 3 structural fires in houses. At this time, we don't have any cause on them. They're suspected to be electrical. But at this time, we're still searching and still looking at that for causes. And at this time, through the fire department, we've got no injuries and no deaths or anything through the night. And that's all we have from the fire department.
As I got down from the press conference, my phone was ringing, and so I went out in the hallway to answer it, and it was Senator Kent Conrad from North Dakota. And President Clinton will be coming to Grand Forks tomorrow. They don't have a specific time, but he will be at the Grand Forks Air Force Base, and he will be doing a flyover. So I'm sure all of you will want to prepare for that. So we are very pleased that this is going to happen, and I'm sure when he sees the disastrous condition that we are in, we will get some assistance, much assistance, so thank you.
Do you know what time he's coming?
They're going to announce it later today, so.
The Grand Forks Air Force Base has completed its 3rd night of operations in supporting relief shelters for people of Grand Forks in the area. Our major concern right now is providing for the safety and also providing a clean atmosphere for the evacuees. This has been required 100% effort on part of all the airmen on the base and a lot of coordination with many of the agencies, both city and federal. We're currently operating shelters at 3 locations. with a capability of housing around 3,000 people. We're not having any shortage of space at this time, and we have the ability to add additional locations if they are necessary. Yesterday, United Hospital was overtaken by rising floodwaters. Airmen from the 319th Medical Group evacuated 50 patients from the hospital. These patients were transported to the Minneapolis area aboard a C-9 AC Nightingale aircraft. This aircraft was stationed out of Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. In addition to this evacuation, the medical group has assumed responsibility for the medical command center for the area. We are prepared to continue our operations by doing whatever it takes, for however long it takes, to make sure the evacuees are taken care of. Make sure that they have a warm place to rest, good food, and whatever encouragement we can offer.
Good morning. I'm Sue Banovitz with the American Red Cross. Currently, I am working in public affairs at the Air Force Base shelter, Red Cross shelter at the Air Force Base. Yesterday at the Red Cross shelter at the Air Force Base, there were approximately 1,700 people in residence. That number fluctuates because people come in and register, then they use a phone bank, 20 phones at a phone bank that has been established by AT&T, which allows them to call without charge long distance to connect with family and friends and find possible shelter locations with those individuals. On behalf of the Red Cross, I'd like to thank the Air Force Base in Grand Forks, particularly General Hess and Captain Spencer, who just spoke, and others at the Air Force Base. They have worked extremely well with the Red Cross, and we sincerely appreciate their partnership. The Red Cross has established, in addition to the Air Force Base shelter, we've established other shelters in the Grand Forks, Minnesota area. There's one at the Air Force Base, shelters in Moorhead, a shelter in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, a shelter in Bemidji, Minnesota, a shelter in Wahpeton, North Dakota, a shelter at Camp Gilbert in North Dakota, and one in also another shelter in Grafton, North Dakota, for a total of 7 shelters. And we will be getting out a news release today specifying those shelter locations and also providing you with specific information about statistics at those shelters. And if it's difficult for you to get a fax, you could call our Fargo Red Cross headquarters, area code 701-239-9497. That's the public affairs number, and you can get statistics from them. The Red Cross, in cooperation with the Air Force at the Air Base, is providing a safe place for people to stay, food, mental health services, which is an extremely important thing, as Mayor Owens indicated earlier. Information, there's televisions that are on so people can learn status of the flood and relief efforts. There's also, as I indicated, that 20-member phone bank established by AT&T, so people can not only connect with their family and friends, but also register with FEMA for important information concerning that. The attitude of the people at the shelter at the Air Base is, as Mayor Owens indicated, very good. It's been interesting watching children making friends with other children who, before they came, didn't know each other. People congregating and socializing, so that's very positive. There has been a child's play area established for the children, and there are other efforts underway to make it a more hospitable and a better and a good place to stay as a temporary shelter. I just want to put in a final reminder. The Red Cross is not a government agency. We're not affiliated with either the federal or state government. We rely totally on the time and financial contributions of the American people. And I would urge people to make contributions to the Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund by calling 1-800-HELP-NOW. Thank you.
So can you talk a little bit more about the mental health services that are being provided and why that is so important?
Well, first of all, the reason why it's important is the people in this area have not only been hit by the flood, but they had blizzard after blizzard. Then they had the flood, and then they had a blizzard, and and the flood continues. They've had to evacuate their homes, so there's a lack of, I would imagine, I'm not a mental health professional, but I would imagine that there's a lack of a feeling of security, fear of the unknown. What are they going to be doing? And consider the children also. Red Cross has trained mental health professionals that are on staff to help children and adults cope with the emotions and the feelings that they're experiencing at the present time. I spoke with a mental health professional from the Red Cross just the other day, and she gave me some examples of behavior that children could experience. That children can regress in their behavior with thumb sucking, bedwetting, clinging to parents, and also adults can experience anger outbursts, lack of concentration, tearfulness, and a variety of other things. Again, I'm not a mental health professional, but that's what I've been told by our mental health people.
That was part of the press conference. We'll get it back. As I said, when they gave us the coordinates, this is all done through satellite coordinates, and they had to change the transponder time right in the middle of the press conference to a different satellite. So we're changing that now. We'll be joining them very shortly and return to it. Obviously, with satellite operations, and there are several TV stations that have satellite trucks out south of town on Washington. They kept being moved further south. Time to rent transponder time is at a premium, and that's why they had to change transponder time, and I'm sure they'll let us know as they return. We have to repan the satellite dish now to find that. Again, very unusual to have to change your coordinates right in the middle of a press conference, but I guess that's part of the involvement that you have when you're broadcasting live in a disaster situation. As we mentioned, some of they've mentioned, as you heard there, the fires downtown have been contained. They hope to bring some cranes in to take down some of the dangerous walls that are still up that are very close to falling down. So they'll be doing that within the next few days. Also, some of the people that have been saved, 8 saved by water with the help of the Coast Guard. Only 2 burglaries reported, which was good. Earlier on in this fiasco, we heard about some possible looting, which is certainly discouraging with the quality of the people that we have in our area, that people would take advantage of that. Very discouraging, and hopefully it is being kept to a minimum. 2 burglaries have been reported, which I guess all things considered isn't too bad. Red Cross saying they need their financial donations more than ever. Now, we have got a lot of calls from all over, including Winnipeg and other parts of Canada, and as far as our signal goes, for the opportunity of people to say that we do want to help. The number that they've given for financial help to the Red Cross, 1-800-HELP-NOW, 1-800-HELP-NOW, so you might want to keep that in mind. We're trying to repan that in. I don't know if we're ready to go or we're getting close to do that. Okay, we're going to put up, while we're waiting for that, we want to put up that map. We added the new area. I think we've told you now that isolated area over to the left side there, and that area is Demers Avenue and 11th Avenue South from 34th Street to 30th Street South. So again, as it's highlighted there, that was the newest now, the mandated evacuation for Grand Forks. The area that we're in, 17th and to 24th, and from Washington out to Columbia Road was mandated mandatory evacuation about 2:45 this morning. Through special arrangements with the government and city officials, we were able to stay on to continue to bring you this news, and hopefully the press conference as we try to repan the dish. As we mentioned, very unusual, obviously, for a lack of time for transponder time. We now go back to that, I believe. Oh, in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, okay. One thing, we'll go back up. I've been a little more educated now in computer terms. I talked about WDAZ and the Forum Communications Company providing Grand Forks flood information on the internet now. The address is www.in-forum.com. That's the website for those getting in. For email address, it would be flood@forumcom.com. The Flood Forum Bulletin Board has been established on Inforum for residents to post and read messages as well as locate relatives. So we hope a lot of you folks out there have computers. Maybe a few of you, I don't know how quickly you had to go out, but if you were able to grab your computer on your evacuation and maybe set up in some of those areas, if you can get enough time, you'll be able to maybe do a lot of the work that we just haven't had time, or repeat some of those numbers. So we hope that that's happening. We certainly want to make it as easy as possible. The City of Grand Forks financial MIS personnel are asked to contact Renee Berger at 772-0924, 772-0924. They do have a request for large clothes, 40 size plus, including underwear needed for the Grand Forks Air Force Base elderly. So if you can help there, we'll get numbers for you later unless you might have them. But a request for large clothes, 40 size plus, is needed, including underwear needed for the Grand Forks Air Force Base, especially for the elderly out there. Okay, we're going to go back now and rejoin the press conference.
Hi, we're going to get started again. I'm the final speaker, so we can wrap this up fairly soon. Okay. No, they're over here. My name is Val Bunting. I am the Public Affairs Director for Federal Emergency Management Agency out of Washington, D.C. And I just wanted to give a brief overview of some of the federal activities that are taking place in light of the continuing flood fight here, not only in Grand Forks, but also we have continuing flood fights in Minnesota, and we also have efforts underway in South Dakota. Yesterday, FEMA Director James Lee Witt met at the White House with cabinet members to help coordinate all the federal efforts that are going into the flood fight here. And as you heard, the president is scheduled to come here. I don't have details of that. We will get that to you as soon as possible. But he is interested, but President Clinton was interested in making sure that the federal government was developing a long-term strategy to address residents' immediate and long-term recovery needs from this devastating disaster. So that is part of the reason why he will come and start to assess what's going on here. But everything that can be done is being done to help these communities recover from what's currently going on. We have one plea from FEMA. When a presidential disaster is declared, we activate an 800 number. That number is 1-800-462-9029. And that is the teleregistration number where disaster victims can start to access federal disaster programs. Many of those victims have been leaving telephone numbers in which our personnel has not been able to get back to them. We'd like to make a plea to people calling that teleregistration number to make sure to leave a number in which one of our personnel will be able to call you back, so that we can start to do some inspections on the homes and verify the damages that you're claiming, so that we will be able to get assistance to you as quickly as possible. If it's a few telephone numbers, that's okay, as long as it's a telephone number in which we are able to access you and start that process going. Just wanted to update you briefly on a few of the things that are going on from other federal departments. Department of Transportation has been providing good Coast Guard support. The Coast Guard has been providing rescue missions by boat and helicopter. They're doing emergency airlift of blood to local hospitals, and they've also been doing airboat support of various activities with firefighting and things of that sort. As you know, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been waging a very valiant struggle with the firefight, and they have been very instrumental in providing sandbags to many of the local communities. I think as of yesterday, just for the city of Grand Forks, the Army Corps of Engineers provided close to 5 million sandbags for what was going on just yesterday. The General Services Administration has been providing logistics support to our disaster field offices, not only the disaster field office that's located in Bismarck, but also been providing support and services to the offices that are being set up here in Grand Forks and also in other locations in South Dakota and also in Minnesota. The Department of Health and Human Services has been providing technical advice to the state of North Dakota disaster operations on any health-related issues. They've also been sending disaster medical assistance teams to impacted areas and been providing medical surgical units to support medical field teams. And you've just received some sheltering information from the American Red Cross. Again, for those individuals, I'd like to make this plea once more to those individuals who are going to be calling our teleregistration toll-free hotline, 1-800-462-9029. Please leave a number where we can access you so that we can call you back to start the disaster assistance process. That's the update that I have from a federal perspective, and now we can open this up for questions and answers of any of the individuals that were here earlier.
Now, whose role is it? Is it the federal jurisdiction, or is it the, I guess, the town's jurisdiction to come up with a dollar figure on how much damage is done when this is received?
Well, usually we try to work on that jointly, but it's usually the state that comes up with the preliminary damage figures. But that's going to be very difficult to do for a while since, of course, many of the flood waters are still cresting in many areas. That's usually the state, though, that comes up with those figures.
Now, it's my understanding that FEMA has individual assistance grants between $10,000 and $15,000, somewhere in that range. Do you think, considering the fact that most of the city has been affected by this disaster, that there might be some changes in Congress to broaden that?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that necessarily. I think that we recognize the severity of the impact of this disaster upon individuals, and part of what we're trying to do is help make sure that we can expedite the services and the assistance that we can provide to individuals. I wouldn't be able to say that the grant program will be expanded in terms of the amount of grants that are going to be given to individuals to help them recover. But we are trying to get the services that we can offer into individual victims' hands as quickly as possible.
Ken Bean wasn't able to address us. Is there someone who could talk to us about what the current river level is?
Let me see if we can get that someone for you. If not, then we can certainly provide a contact for you and get that to you.
Val, some of these other people that were talking before, are they going to be available for questions? I don't see them in here.
Yes, they are. Let me go get them.
Yesterday you said FEMA cost up already $800,000 towards this effort. Do you have a rise number all forward?
We will have to get that for you. I'm quite sure we can get a new number for you today.
I have a question about some of this information that's being flashed behind you, the cooling of anhydrous ammonia. I mean, what's the situation there and why is that significant?
Let me get the spokesperson that would be able to address that issue, and we'll be right back in just 1 second.
Of course, now as you see the press conference, as it's going, as they begin to ask questions, we did have something as we're waiting there. There were 3 house fires in Grand Forks area Sunday. A lot of people saw the smoke on that one. We're curious of what that was. The 3 fires were at 1510 18th Avenue South, 1910 18th Avenue South, and 1111 Walnut. They were contained. They were contained, but the extent of the damage is not known at this time. They're going out, as you can see, the director of FEMA, to try and get some information that was asked by someone at the press. Press conference is being held on the campus of UND at the ATRC office, I believe it is. And of course, they're waiting now to ask questions of the people that were there. Trying to get more information for you as they get organized. All employees of Brady Martz & Associate are asked to call their Devils Lake office, 662-4968. 662-4968 for all employees of the Brady Martz and Associates. They were one that lost their facilities. They were on the top floor of the First National Financial Center, one that was pretty well gone up in the top 4th floor anyway of Brady Martz. So they're asked to contact the Devils Lake office. As you can see there, the information, tremendous amount of sandbags have been used, as she said, and the flood continues to rage and continues to go north very quickly. As a matter of fact, that reminds me, excuse me a minute as we find the one of the numbers, because as this heads north, they're going to be closing the border, we understand, at midnight tonight. We've got more information on that that we will get to you.
If there's any questions y'all had of the Air Force? Okay.
What are the hours that the media will be allowed to the base today?
Excuse me for a second.
This is the, whoops. When you deal with the Air Force, you deal with cell phones, so they were coming in the Air Force side, housing many, many people, thousands of people that have been able to go out there, many in the 3-bay hangar area. People out there have been there for 3 or 4 days, and certainly, and we understand, been watching WDAZ. I know a lot of the base personnel, had some excellent opportunities to visit with them and know how proud we are of the base and how proud the base personnel of Grand Forks, and certainly they're doing everything possible to help.
There's some question about the chemical plant north of Grand Forks. Here's what raised the concern earlier in the day. We have a large anhydrous ammonia plant north of Grand Forks, about 1.5 miles, 2 miles north of the city limits on Highway 81. That anhydrous ammonia plant goes under the name of CF Industries. Should they lose electrical power, they would not be able to keep the anhydrous ammonia cool, and they would have to vent those. However, generators have now been shipped up there, any additional sandbags they would need, and the situation is fully under control, and they said there would not be a problem.
If they have that, what happens if they have the vent? If they have the vent, is that a danger down there?
If they had to vent, obviously we don't want people, this is a poisonous gas. The normal protocol for anhydrous ammonia, as I understand it, we would turn off the air handlers such as in this building, and we'd shelter it right here in place. If it would be released, say, right now during this press conference. Turn off air handlers, shelter right in place.
Can you quantify how much ammonia we're talking about here?
I had a tour of the facility, in fact, last August. I don't have any numbers. It's a large distribution plant for CF Industries, which is a large corporation nationwide. And it's shipped here both by rail and by tanker. And it's stored here and then distributed.
What are the commercial uses of the chemical plants?
The what?
What is anhydrous ammonia used for?
Oh, anhydrous ammonia is used extensively in farming. It's a fertilizer.
Is there any problem should it get wet as opposed to running out of electricity?
I don't have the hazmat forms in front of me as far as the water solubility in the air and all that kind of stuff. It would more likely drift in the air, and it would definitely smell very, very bad. You'd know when it's in the air.
Would you have the same health effects in terms of it getting wet and then releasing?
That I'm not sure.
How many generators do you have to bring in to keep it going?
I know they got one up there right away. I wouldn't be surprised if they got a backup generator to the first generator, because that's an important plant, obviously.
How big is the generator?
Didn't give me specifics on that.
How big is the plant? I mean, how much are we talking about in terms of quantity of the anhydrous ammonia?
See, it's going to vary also by how much they're storing right now.
Right.
And I don't want you to bombard the industry up there with phone calls, but I don't know how much the storage capacity is even, let alone how much they're storing. I just don't have numbers on that.
How many tanks do they have?
There's 2 very, very large tanks up there. I'm just going to guesstimate here, layman-wise, they're probably 40, 50 feet tall tanks, quite large and around, and they process it there and ship it out.
How much of an area would be affected if there were a leak? Would it be the city or?
Well, that's all going to be dependent on wind direction, wind speed, We have hazardous material people here at the Grand Forks Fire Department that deal with those kind of issues. They have a computerized program called Cameo. They can put in all the variables, whether it's the wind speed, the humidity, all those kind of things, and they can actually draw a plume on a computerized map instantly to know what kind of area would be affected.
Again, you're satisfied it's under control, right?
Yes, I've been assured that it's under control. In fact, so much so that if the pool media was going to go there, we could take you there. I mean, that's how safe it is at this time, so it's under control. But we won't take you there, don't worry. I think you all want to go downtown.
Can I ask you about the situation with the telephone switch equipment? For those of us who don't understand...
The telephone situation, that's with the U.S. West building in Grand Forks here. It's on the corner of North 5th Street and 1st Avenue. They're maintaining that building right now. They had it sandbagged outside, but they also required additional sandbags inside. The pressure on the doors was getting to be quite significant. They have pumps there. They're pumping all the water out, anything that's leaking in, and that's contained right now. But there is a possibility there could be loss of phone service should that building go down.
Meaning anybody with a cell phone or anybody with a telephone in the Grand Forks area would not be able to make a call?
The hardline phones would go down. As I understand, Cellular One service, which services a lot of this area here, also has their equipment there.
How widespread in the area are you talking about, please, that potentially could lose phone service?
I don't have an area description, no.
A guesstimate?
I'm sorry, I'm not a telephone person, so I couldn't tell you.
Byron, this morning I spoke with a sandbagging volunteer who was down at the phone building, and he said at the time he was there this morning, they did pick someone up and take them out of the downtown area, someone who was still living there. Do you have any guesses as to whether others might still be there?
Again, it's just too hard to determine if people are going to stay well hidden in their home. We're not going to know they're there until they're desperate to want to come out. We're still asking them to put out a flag, anything, so we can pick them up. There's no way to, other than canvassing the area, to know who's in there.
How did you find out about the 96-year-old person, that that person was even still around?
I'm assuming that probably came through a third party as a welfare check, maybe, because of the medication factor, and the police did go in there and take her out.
Byron, can you give an estimate of how many people remain in mandatory evacuation areas?
The rough population that's affected?
Well, no, the number that are still in those areas. Weren't supposed to be.
Again, unless we did a canvassing, we don't know how many are in those areas that aren't supposed to be. When I went through yesterday, it was virtual ghost town. I saw 2 people on jet skis. Outside of that, I saw no one in a home, no one on a roof, any other building, any other sign of life in the residential areas.
And what's the latest figure on the total number of people who have evacuated?
I talked to the Grand Forks Sheriff's Office coordinator for search and rescue yesterday at 5 o'clock. They had taken 8 out, and they're continuing to patrol the streets. There may be more than that, but that's the total he had as of 5 o'clock yesterday.
38,000 people roughly who have left to...
Approximately.
And does that include East Grand Forks, Minnesota?
No, that's probably just Grand Forks.
So that's 38,000, you think? This year you're saying 95% Grand Forks population. If I understand Grand Forks population to be 50%, that's something more in the order of 48,000.
That are in those mandatory evacuated areas. There's still a certain side of the west part of the interstate yet that's not under mandatory evacuation. There's still certain sections in the southwest part that are not.
I'm sorry, maybe making you repeat, but of the areas that are now under mandatory evacuation, what percentage of those?
They expanded it this morning to 24th Avenue South, and I'm going to give you a ballpark figure here since I know the city pretty well. We're right around, the southwest part of town is not that well populated. Obviously, there's a lot of commercial there, so probably close to 80–85% of the population, maybe even 90, say 80 to 90% of the population. That other 10% land area-wise is where we have our malls, commercial buildings, things like that. So even though there's a lot of land area there, it's not all residential.
And in terms of the geographic area of the cities handle what percentage?
Well, that's basically what I'm giving you. 80–90% geographically is in that mandated area.
Geographically, population-wise?
Oh, population-wise? Again, I'm giving you estimates here because we haven't evacuated this. I'd still say we're around 90–95% then of the population. So there's probably only 2,000 people that live in the southwest part of town now that are not under the mandatory.
So I want to wait this, but earlier you're saying you're figuring about 38,000 people from Grand Forks. That's not 90.
Are you talking about sheltering?
I'm talking about how many people have been evacuated from the city of Grand Forks. If you're saying 95% or 50,000.
Yeah, then we're closer to, probably closer to 45,000. Okay.
Like 9,000. Yeah.
It's hard to get accurate numbers on all these things because, you know, it started out voluntary and there's some people that still are trying to get a few things out. We also have a problem with people that want to get back in, and we're going to be real strict on that. They think they're going to lose food in their freezers or pick up a checkbook, and again, that's not going to be allowed.
The rate of the flood advance slow down.
It's holding steady at this time, and they figure it's going to hold steady for about a week.
You don't expect any more neighborhoods to be flooded?
Pardon me?
You don't expect any part of the town to be flooded?
There is water still moving in the new areas.
Has that slowed down?
Yes.
Has the rate of advance slowed down?
The rate of advance? I couldn't tell you that. We hope to have Ken be in here, and he got detained, so he couldn't get over here. He would have given you all the specifics on the water and the rise and so forth, so I can't really speak to that. I'm mostly going to kind of contain myself more now to public safety issues.
Is there any way to find those numbers, Byron?
You've been waiting. No, those were burglaries that reported. There were not arrests made on those.
How long is the dike season? You like that? The new dike, National Guard.
How long is what?
The dike that's building along Washington Street.
The dike they're building on Washington, I did talk to the head of the Corps of Engineers there. Starts at Demers and Wash and goes out to the 1600 block, so you're talking about 11, 12 block length of Washington Street. There's roughly 13 blocks in a mile in this city, so very close to, yes, a mile stretch.
Can I make a very, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt for 1 second. We have two individuals here from East Grand Forks, Congressman Collins, and also the mayor of East Grand Forks.
Yes. Okay, you want me to introduce?
In case you haven't heard that, we have the mayor of East Grand Forks
we're gonna have
coming over into the press
Congressman Colin Peterson from Grand Forks. You go first. And the second person is the mayor of East Grand Forks, Lynn Stauss, S-T-A-U-S-S. We're glad we got you over here.
Yeah.
And this is the mic for here. Will I make this your own? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, Mayor. I don't know if you've all been in the room here, but we just got word 20 minutes ago that the president will be here tomorrow. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. I've been talking to James Lee Witt this morning twice and asked that they consider doing some kind of a special long-term relief for this area over and above the FEMA disaster declaration that's in place. There's a meeting this afternoon at 4 o'clock in the White House with the congressional delegation from Minnesota, North Dakota, and I think South Dakota to talk about a long-term recovery plan for this area. Obviously, I will not be there, but they know where I'm coming from. I think we need to have money available for people to rebuild their houses, not loan money, but actual grant money to rebuild, money for businesses so they can get back in business. What we have in place, in my opinion, is not adequate to meet the demands of this disaster. And so they're going to be working on that this afternoon, and the President will be coming tomorrow to the Grand Forks Air Force Base, and they'll be flying over the area, and then they'll be doing some kind of a meeting here in Grand Forks someplace. They're working on the schedule right now. So this is the mayor of East Grand Forks who we commandeered a State Patrol helicopter to get across the river, and thought that appreciate the chance to talk to some of the people on our side of the river that are wondering what's going on in East Grand Forks. So the mayor is here to talk about that.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to tell the congressman are, first of all, thanks for coming up, and second, you can see the need that we have from both Grand Forks and East Grand Forks for a bridge that has a little higher elevation so that we don't have to drive to Fargo or to Pembina to get across. But in assessing the East Grand Forks, we've had an evacuation of we've asked for mandatory evacuation of the 9,000 residents. We have at this time approximately about 250 that are still trying to hold out in their homes, sandbagging, trying to preserve their possession, which is their most valuable possession, which is their home. So they're still pumping, and we've provided electricity to this point so that they can continue. If that electricity should ever go off, those 200 or 250 will also have to give up. Yesterday we had the I had the privilege of going around with Congressman Peterson and viewing the area, and it's very devastating. It's much more, it's much worse, I guess, than I ever thought it would be. We go into 2 areas in our town where there's about 600 homes completely covered with water or just about completely submerged to the 2nd story. Some of the homes are floating off of their foundations, and it really hits home when you start thinking of these people that they left their home with basically the shirt on their back and a small suitcase if they had that. They have no money, they have no place to stay, and we have had to tell them that they have to stay out of town for at least 2 weeks. We have to do that for the safety of the people. The water is contaminated, and also just coming back and trying to get to your home, the current is so severe out there. It is really moving, and anything could happen, and we do not want to lose any lives at this time. And that's one thing both East Grand Forks and Grand Forks have been so fortunate to this point. We have not heard of any loss of life, and that's the most important thing. But one of the things that we have to get out to our residents of East Grand Forks is we need to know your location. We need to know that, or we need you to know that we're out here to support you. We were trying to establish a new city hall out at the Comfort Inn in East Grand Forks, and believe me, it is not a Comfort Inn right now. I don't mean to put it down, but we are lacking no water. The same with the sewer situation is in all East Grand Forks, the sewer is shut down. And in all East Grand Forks also, the water is shut down. We are still trying to sandbag our treatment plant because we feel if we can keep that from getting totally contaminated, that we will not only be able to possibly supply East Grand Forks with water when we get set up, but we will be able to help Grand Forks in their needs because they have come underwater already. So it's very necessary for us to do what we can, and we have the National Guard helping to supply us with a sandbag dike around that building to prevent it from flooding. But back to the residents, my heart goes out to you people that have had to leave your home. I too have been flooded, but not as severe as others. I have the first floor that is covered in raw sewage, as most of you will have to come back to. But I want you to reassure you that we're there to help you, that we're going to try to get help with FEMA, of course, and we'd like you to get in contact with them as soon as possible so that they might reach out to you as soon as they can. You're going to have patience because it's going to take a lot of patience because of the time period that you're going to be away. And please, when these people try to stop you from coming into the city, we would appreciate that you would abide by our ruling because it's necessary. Do not give them a bad time. It's for your own health, like I've said before. Also, no motorboats or crafts, watercrafts on the river. This is not a playground. This is very serious. And the current, like I said, can be extremely bad out there. Other than that, I guess, like I was saying, we're trying to reestablish City Hall down in the Comfort Inn. We're getting some of the personnel that were in City Hall to come back and help us. Hopefully we'll get some numbers that the people can call, that we can answer the questions that you need to know. We also want to get out and take pictures of the area, and if you news media can help us, the number one concern we hear that people want to know is, what does my house look like? You know, and you can understand that. You're away and you wonder what type of damage is there. And in some cases, you know, coming back to a car that you dropped off and has been completely submerged with water, and going to a house that has been just about 3/4 under, or even if it's half, even if it's the first floor in raw sewage, what do you really have to come back to right now? We don't have, you won't be able to use the electricity or the stoves, you won't be able to use the refrigerators. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of help from people, not only in our community, but from people throughout the state. And I have to comment on the people of Minnesota also, and I'm sure it's here in North Dakota also, but the people that have reached out from Crookston, Thief River Falls, Bemidji, Fergus Falls, I can't say enough of the support that you have given our community. We appreciate it. They've taken thousands of our people in and moved them out to different homes. And the generosity of these people is just really overwhelming to all of us. And I once again just want to say to the the people in our community. Have faith. I flew over in a helicopter to get here.
We'll also hear from the people who have been displaced because of the flood. All of this and more coming up on a special flood edition of News Center 8. It's coming up.
What do parents say about Shriners Hospitals?
My boy was slowly losing the use of his leg, and I went to several national organizations, and they all turned me down. To this day, I thank the Lord for Shriners. I see them in the parade, and I get a lump in my throat, and I feel like saluting the entire organization. These people are so caring. Their staff at the hospital is unequal to any I've ever seen. I don't care if you're black, brown, born in Mexico or in Africa. They don't ask where you're from. They merely say, what can I do for you?
Shriners Hospitals, providing free expert medical care to children with orthopedic and burn problems. For information, call this toll-free number.
From WDAZ News in Grand Forks, Milo Smith, Jane Joyce, meteorologist John Wheeler, and Pat Sweeney, Sports. This is your home team from News Center 8.
Deserted homes and streets are surrounded by Red River floodwaters tonight. Thousands of families are displaced hundreds of miles from home, and it could be several days to weeks before they can return. And the recovery process will be much longer once the Red River returns to its banks. Good evening, and thank you for joining News Center 8. We're bringing you continuous coverage of the Red River flood fight here in the greater Grand Forks area, and we want to make a special welcome to our extended audience tonight in Bismarck and the Minot areas. They're watching us tonight on the North Dakota ABC network.
Many of you have friends and relatives that are directly affected by the flood, some of whom may be in shelter. Tonight, the story of the devastating flood and fire in greater Grand Forks, talk of the nation, if not the world. And it has gotten the attention of President Bill Clinton. The president is making a special trip here tomorrow to get a first-hand look at the devastation.
The details are sketchy right now, but the president is expected to arrive at the Grand Forks Air Force Base around noon tomorrow and tour flood-ravaged Grand Forks by helicopter and talk with flood evacuees staying at the Grand Forks Air Force Base. The base has opened its doors as a disaster relief shelter, and Governor Schaefer says he doesn't expect President Clinton to travel off the Air Force Base grounds much except by helicopter.
I think, Jane, we can maybe take a look at some of this video shot by a pool camera just this afternoon in Grand Forks, in East Grand Forks, and maybe we can just see what we see and narrate a little bit, which is what we have done much of the time the last when this video has come in, because we know that this is the stuff people wants to see. So that we'll just kind of let some of this air, and if we notice an area, maybe we can point out what we're looking at.
This appears to be close to the downtown area. I'm not certain. I did see my house actually a little bit earlier today on some news footage from ABC, and so I have an idea of what I'm going to be coming home to.
Yeah, but you live on the second floor.
Yes, so I'm lucky so far, but let's see here. That appears to be St. Michael's Church. I'm not positive, though, in Grand Forks.
Okay, now I think we get a better idea here as we
Okay, that's the courthouse. This is basically the